Good afternoon, everybody. We're excited to be here with you today. Thank you, Brand Innovators, for having us. And hopefully nobody's in a food coma. But we're going to talk about something that's important to all of us that I think we all struggle with, which is measurement. How to do it, what it looks like, and what the struggles are, and how to make your marketing as effective as possible. And I'm really lucky today because I get to be here with two experts in the measurement space that are going to bring some varying perspectives to it. And I'm going to let Blair and Leah introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Leah Bliss. I'm at General Motors. I focus on OnStar specifically, and my role is really to help drive marketing effectiveness with all of our investment. So leading things like reporting and insights, experimentation, MMM, MTA, all the measurement goodness to make sure dollars in are driving towards our goals.
Blair Thompson. I joined GM in September. I'm on the what we call media investment optimization team. So like Leah, we're in charge of measuring marketing effectiveness. I'm focusing on the 4 vehicle brands, so GMC, Buick, Cadillac, and Chevy. And our role is to help marketers understand how their spend is being tied to sales and the incremental impact of our media investment.
So, excuse me, we'll kick it off. You got a little InMarket sandwich. Justin led into lunch, and I'm taking over after that. So I won't go into any update on what InMarket is, as Justin kind of already talked about it. But GM I think is interesting. As we talk to our clients, a lot of them use an MMM or they use an MTA or MMA. You're unique, I think, because you use both models, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about the differences and why you use both and how they both help you along the way.
Great question. Yeah, we like to use both and then pair it with additional modeling as well. And what we find is the MMM has become our source of truth. How are we doing against our sales goals? What's driving the most incremental performance for us? How do we lean in? But MMM is retroactive. It's a month and a half into the new year. And next week we have our meeting to look at Q3 2023 results. So there's quite a delay that happens with an MMM, but the data is still hugely valuable to look at the broader, bigger trends and what's happening across the channels. MTA is more timely. We're seeing at the campaign level, platform level, what's happening, what's driving incrementality, and the two together allow us to piecemeal a broader picture into what are the bigger trends that we need to focus on, and then what underneath that are the drivers. And we pair that with a lot of other additional modeling and analytic tools to then pressure test it all. But there's gaps in everything, and so for us it's a lot of continuous review of all the different tools and what they're saying and how to triangulate it all to get to the real story of what are the drivers, what's giving us the performance, and where do we need to optimize.
And I'll just jump in to say that they both have their different values. So while MMM is more of a holistic planning tool, it's pulling out non-media macro factors to understand what is truly incremental to media. And while there's a delay in the data, its true value is in its forward-looking optimization ability. So while you're getting a delay in the data itself, when you're really using it well, it's when you're planning for the next year. So MTA can provide you those quicker answers when things are in market, but MMM is very important for holistic planning. I would say we call it like the compass, and then MTA is the map, like overarching how we want to spend our dollars for the year. And then when you want to get granular, MTA can help answer those questions.
And Blair, you talked about that you work across the 4 brands. Do they all use the same MMM, or do they all have their individual MMMs, and how do you bring kind of all that together?
Right, so there's 4 different models. Each MMM is going to be operating for its own vehicle brands, and it's working to optimize total vehicle sales, so not any individual nameplate, but how do we spend to drive overall bigger sales across all the brands. They are not, the 2 MMM and MTA do talk to each other within each brand, so the Chevy MMM and MTA will communicate with each other, but each of those is separate for each vehicle. So we're really working internally to build out reporting that's consistent across the brands to help leadership, take broader arching takeaways across each of them and how to cross-share learnings.
and we were talking earlier and talking yesterday, there's always gaps in data. You're in a fairly unique situation versus many brands because you're in a multi-tier solution similar to Boston Beer. Boston Beer is a three-tier set that they have to deal with: manufacturer, distributor, retailer, ultimately consumer. And you have a bit of a two-tier or three-tier system between yourself and then the dealers, and there may be an intermittent step even in there. How do you deal with that data gap?
Sure. So most of the measurement is on what's called Tier 1. It's our national media. So that's the measurement that we're managing at GM internally. So we're looking at that development. When you get down to Tier 3, you're looking at more the individual dealers, and they, maintain their own marketing budgets, maintain their own data. So there is that gap between what we measure at a national level and then what the individual dealers are marketing. I think there's work being done to work together to see, the benefit to both of them sharing some data with us and us being able to provide free measurement back. And MMM is an expensive solution, not something that an individual dealer can maintain. So kind of the mutual benefits of us getting more information and them hopefully getting back some insights that they can use.
And do you supplement with any other types of measurement, visitation measurements or anything like that?
That would be more at the dealer level that they maintain that. But what's interesting is OnStar is a different model.
Perfect.
Yeah, OnStar has a slightly different model because we don't have to contend with the dealers necessarily. You have to subscribe to OnStar, you have to call our call center or subscribe online in certain instances. And so we collect all that one piece juicy data that we then use to help with our measurement. So a lot of what we supplement MMM and MTA with is closed loop analysis. We use a lot of first party targeting to figure out what's happening, and we'll put holdouts in place to say, okay, yes, the MMM said there was incrementality with non-brand search. Let's go layer a 1P audience onto our non-brand search, have a holdout in place and look at the lift and say, yes, it aligns with the MMM, it aligns with the MTA, let's keep going, we're validating it along the way. Or there's something interesting over here, do we have to go tweak the model? So we're in a slightly different position from the auto brands because we have all that data at our fingertips that we're leaning into.
Great. Let's shift over to a little bit to KPIs. Do you have a singular KPI? Do you have multiple KPIs? If you have multiple, how do you determine which is the primary KPI? And do all the constituents that you deal with through the organization align on the KPIs?
We've been going through a transformation. I started at GM in June, so fairly recently. When I got there, we had a lot of KPIs. We called them the Ks. We had KEAs, KBAs, what they meant, which ones they were. I still can't tell you. There were a ton. But we've been doing a lot of work on the performance-driven marketing team that Blair and I are both a part of to change that and really narrow in on what is the primary goal for each line of business. What is that KPI? What should it be? So for OnStar, there were a ton of different things that they were measuring in the last 6+ months. Now the whole team is aligned. Hey, you know what? Our sole job is to drive that subscription and maintain the customer. So it's been a transformation, and we've been able to weed out a lot of the additional metrics. We still look at them because they help influence how we're doing overall, but we're now rallied around a single KPI, which is very, very different in a short period of time.
And same for the vehicle brands, at least on the MMM side, there are 3 main KPIs we look at, but the biggest one being sales. The idea with how we set up the models was to have an upper funnel, a middle funnel, and a lower funnel KPI. So sales, and then in the middle, website traffic, and then on top of that, brand opinion. Sales ultimately gets used the most. It's a unique position that MMM can tie spend to sales. That's something that's very valuable. Website traffic is difficult for us because, as I said, with the blind gaps in the data, like some people end up going to the dealer website, so us being able to tie to that is more difficult. Brand opinion is one that we're considering. It's just more of a static number versus like the model for something more dynamic. It will change the recommendations over time. So something that Boston Consulting Group has pushed is like the first fast response, like the initial after an ad, the recall and tracking things like that from an awareness perspective just will be more dynamic and kind of change the recommendations over time. So that's one we're still kind of contending with, but sales just ultimately is the most important.
Great. Last night when we were talking, we talked about sometimes the MMM and the MTA tell you different things and are guiding you to optimize differently. How do you handle those situations?
Yeah, I think on top of that, so if the different KPIs even tell you to do different things, that's a different struggle too. GM is uniquely positioned from past organizations I've been at where, our upper funnel channels still perform well from a sales perspective. Like I've worked in the past and seen TV, for example, not perform as well as sales, but do better to brand awareness. At GM, we see that TV does really well for driving sales. That's why we're all over live sports all the time. So when that type of thing comes up and there's different recommendations depending on what you're optimizing to, it does take that human element of what is most important right now. Some vendors will allow you to kind of weight the different KPIs in terms of importance and, say 80% of our importance is sales and 20% is on brand opinion, like you produce a single output of recommendation. So kind of pushing your vendors to give you a more simplified solution helps. In terms of MTA not aligning, a certain amount you kind of accept for different methodologies and are not going to always align. MTA also has more blind spots in the data. There's certain channels we can't measure, like YouTube, for example. So the online video will look different between MTA and MMM. I think just working with your vendor to right size that and make sure at least directionally you're getting the same results. There are ways to kind of bring them closer together. Some clients choose to let them fully run freely, knowing they're going to be different, and some people choose to have them more closely aligned. We're kind of toying with being somewhere in the middle of that.
I would also add a lot of what we pair our MMM and MTA data with is experimentation and test and learn. So when we see differences in the models or even we see a trend appearing, we'll design tests and different experiments to dig in a little bit further and validate, okay, both models are saying this, do we really believe it? Yes, we do. Or one model is telling us one thing, another model is telling us another thing. What does this third experiment, study, modeling tell us? Does it align to one over the other? If so, interesting, let's go keep pulling at that thread to understand it further, and then go back to the model that was telling us a different story and figure out, well, why is it telling us a different story? Let's go tweak the model. So one thing that we're constantly doing is adjusting our modeling along the way. For OnStar right now, we have an MMM model in place that we've been using. We're actually going through a huge rebuild of that model to incorporate in a ton new data points because our business has shifted, our goals have shifted slightly, so we're incorporating that in. So it's a continued iterative process.
So it's come up here earlier in the conversation. We talked a little bit last night, and I don't know the last fireside chat that hasn't spoken about it, but how does AI play into that?
Everyone's favorite topic, AI. It's a priority for us too, I would say. We're fortunate, we have a whole team of really smart data scientists that are working on a lot of different models right now. We look at AI as an opportunity. We have pretty aggressive growth targets that we're being tasked with for marketing this year. And our take on being able to hit that is we've got to really be pointed in finding the right consumers who are actually in market for our products. And we need a lot of advanced modeling to find those consumers. We need a strong customer lifetime value model that then we can build upon with predictive modeling to find people in market. So to us, AI is a portion of all of our measurement as well as our audience targeting. We see it as another way to leverage all of our data, feed it into our MMM and TA results, and vice versa. So it's all connected.
So at lunch we were speaking that performance marketing is still somewhat new at GM, what do you think has driven that, and what's the adoption been like, and how have you gotten the organization that has a lot of legacy folks to adopt performance marketing?
Yeah, performance marketing is brand new. I mean, I just said it earlier, when I first got to GM 6 months ago, OnStar had multiple KPIs. They were looking at everything. Brand health, CPM was a goal. It was endless. And there's been a lot of push to change the way that we're working. I think a lot of it has been driven, honestly, by new blood coming in, new board members asking questions. Why does Tesla not spend money? And why are they growing? Why are we spending billions? What's going on? So there's pressure from the top. And our team is a relatively new division. They've been around for a few years, but it's taken many different shapes. And the latest team that was brought in was really to satisfy that big question of, well, how can there be brands that don't spend much that are rapidly growing? And where is our fine line between spend and no spend? And so with the top-down pressure and those questions coming, paired with a lot of the measurement we've been able to put in place with MMM, MTA, and then a lot of support in driving experimentation, we've changed the culture and the conversation. Our marketers are being asked real tough questions now, how to justify everything. And so they're looking to Blair and the team and I to answer that. How do we measure it? I can't just go spend $5 billion over here. What are we going to do? How do we prove it? And so that's where the conversation starts shifting rapidly, when real tough questions get asked and the team needs the support to answer.
That's a great answer, but I've been at other organizations, a lot of the job has been just convincing that they need something like this. So my experience has been more in RFPing, bringing in vendors and explaining how to use this for decisioning. A lot of that work had already been done when Leah and I joined. Like, the model's been up for a while, at least especially on the vehicle brand side. So people are very eager for answers. I've been pleasantly surprised to see that. Sometimes it's just convincing someone you need this information versus them proactively coming to us. I think it does come with new leadership, new pressure to spend money more efficiently, and how do we measure that efficiency versus a kind of open-ended budget to get sales done.
Great. Shifting focus a little bit, we've all worked on brands that have had your current consumer base, which isn't necessarily where you want to be long term, and brands are in transition, and you have that aspirational consumer. When you have those situations, how do you work with your MMMs and MTAs to adapt to that, from your current to looking at where you're trying to get to?
Yeah, I'd say one of the vehicle brands has been a recent conversation, just having an older demographic and the desire to bring in a younger audience. I think the challenge with MMM is it is going to be based on past performance and how you've run media in the past and the creative you've used and the targeting. So when you're shifting the overall strategy, it's going to take time for MMM to catch up. So it will be telling you maybe that it's not as efficient to market on social media if that's in the past how you've been spending, and you're trying to go after a new consumer. It is more expensive to bring them in, so it might not look great from an efficiency standpoint, but if that's the broader direction that the organization wants to take, I think MMM is just a part of that, and as a testing into it, like smaller investments at a time, letting the model catch up and measure and seeing how it looks over time.
Are you guys open for some questions? Great. How about we open it up?
Hi.
Hi again.
So on the vehicle side, product life cycles, cars take a long time because you gotta retool at the factory, you have to build the car, there's so much that goes into it. So when you're looking at data, how do you project to the future of a vehicle entrant?
Yeah. That's a good question, especially around things like EV. There will be a big initial push for media in terms of driving awareness, and then sometimes the vehicle supply, especially as we've seen recently, isn't necessarily there yet. So the difficulty is kind of building that awareness and that push in the model initially. It might not look as great. Your ROAS will be higher. You're spending a lot of money on sales that aren't materializing yet. So I think just knowing that that's the life cycle and we are starting to see that catch up as vehicles become available. It's just a knowledge that we have and that we're aware of, and part of having multiple KPIs also helps. You know, if the goal at that point is driving awareness, like having a KPI that measures that is important. If sales isn't the ultimate thing you can achieve at that time.
But I guess tying to that is obviously we've just come through a pretty unique period with COVID, and the auto industry was greatly affected. I'm assuming that has started to normalize, and as you're running your models, has that affected your abilities with those models, or how do you adjust for those sorts of things?
Yeah, we'll look at kind of the metrics on a pre and post chip shortage perspective. There's a period of time where, I mean, we're not quite at the levels we were before that, but are like gradually growing. So it's just something that we track. Just like and the nice thing about these models is that it brings in macroeconomic impact. So, you know, we can actually put a number behind the impact that has. And you're able to still see what media was able to drive during that time and kind of hold it accountable for what it can do and be able to quantify the impact that those macro headwinds have.
Great. Any other questions?
Hey, thank you. This has been great. Question for you. You mentioned brand health briefly. Can you just speak to how you think about brand health, its role? You obviously mentioned sales, you know, as a key measure that signal, but just any brand health as a leading indicator, anything specific to brand health that you notice in terms of how you would take that into account in overall effectiveness?
Yeah, honestly, I'd say this is an area in development, to be honest. I think the current model that we have on brand opinion, it's helpful. We can get a sense of how certain channels are driving to brand opinion. The issue is it doesn't change that much over time. Opinion will go up by a percentage or two and down, and it's hard to make dynamic decisions based on that. I think it's important to track, especially if you are investing a lot in upper funnel, to have a KPI to tie to it. In the past jobs, as I mentioned, I've seen those models might discount TV heavily because when looking at sales, they're not as efficient of a driver. So it's important to have, especially if you have a big upper funnel investment, to just be able to measure it against what it's supposed to be measured. You know, TV should be measured a more upper funnel way. Mm-hmm. I think the challenge is just finding the right awareness metric to use. I don't think brand opinion is the right one for us right now, but finding one that's more dynamic and that changes more often would be a better solution for us. But I would say like the first round, I've always seen consideration on awareness used. Awareness is less important for a brand that people are afraid to wear of, but like GM. But I think just a lot of these vendors will bring in external data sources that can help pinpoint and help you optimize to those KPIs.
Well, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.